Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core on the PSP was one of my favorite games on that console, and quite possibly one of my favorite Final Fantasy games in general. It's one of my most memorable games from my childhood and has a home on my list as one of my favorite games of all time. The main reason being the main character of this story, Zack Fair, who was a very influential part of my childhood. So suffice it to say, if Square Enix dropped the ball on this remaster, I would be very vocal about it. But I can assure you that is not the case here. Square Enix was nice enough to send me a review copy, so thank you Square Enix for the opportunity to review this nostalgic gem. In this review, I'm only able to talk about plot points up until the end of Chapter 5, but I will be keeping this review spoiler-free anyway. If you want to see my full spoiler review, look out for that video when the game releases on December 13th. For those of you that have never played the original Crisis Core and are playing Crisis Core Reunion as the first time experiencing this story, let me give you a little bit of insight into the characters and lore. Crisis Core Reunion is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII and follows the young and idealistic protagonist of this story, Zack Fair. His dream is to become none other than a hero. I know it sounds pretty cliche, but his journey and character growth, along with everything that he goes through in the story, has made him a lot of people's favorite Final Fantasy character of all time, myself included. In this game, Zack will meet many characters that add to the growth of his character, some of the more notable ones being Angeal, Cloud, Sephiroth, and of course, Aerith. You also get to see a lot of backstory for characters like Sephiroth and Cloud that, in my opinion, add a lot to the story of Final Fantasy VII as a whole. However, I don't recommend playing this game yet if you have not played the OG Final Fantasy VII and are planning to, as it spoils a pretty major plot twist in Cloud's story in Final Fantasy VII. In Zack's journey to become a hero, he has many ups and downs, so be prepared for an emotional roller coaster of a ride throughout the entirety of the game. I won't go into much more detail than that for the story because I want you all to experience it and meet these characters for yourselves, and I want to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible. Just know that if you are a fan of Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy in general, that you will absolutely fall in love with this character and his story. Boy, oh boy, Square Enix was not kidding when they said that this is much more than a mere remaster. While it is still categorized as a remaster, I will say it feels much more like a remake. None of the story has been changed from the original from what I have seen so far, unlike Final Fantasy VII Remake, but they improved the quality of this game so drastically that comparing this to some of Square Enix's other remasters like Final Fantasy VIII and IX or even Chrono Cross, it's just night and day. This has to be by far the best remaster of a game that Square Enix has ever done. Everything in this remaster has been severely overhauled, from the graphics to the combat to the UI, the music, being able to run the game at 120 frames per second, the way that materia works in this game, the voice acting.
What the hell did you do, Angeal?
We're not going to talk about this part. Jokes aside, the entire game has been voice acted, so even scenes in the original or NPCs that originally did not have voice lines are now completely voice acted. That is a massive plus for a game that is over 15 years old and very hard to come by these days unless you use an emulator or still have a PSP lying around somewhere. The new renditions of the music are absolutely beautiful and made me tear up more than a few times just hearing them play in game. Now, not everything about this remaster is perfect, but it's damn near close. I only have a few minor issues with some things in the remaster, one of those being the outdated dialogue. Some of the lines, maybe most of the dialogue in the game, can come off as a bit cringe at times, and considering they revoiced the entire game because of new voice actors and voicing lines of characters that previously had no voice acting at all, I find it a bit weird that they decided to change very little, if any, of the original outdated dialogue, but I can also see them not changing this on purpose due to wanting to keep the game as close to the original as possible and to keep that nostalgia factor. The UI has been overhauled as well, and for the better, of course. There's not much to say here besides that they pretty much copied the UI from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it works very well. The menus are very easy to navigate through. One of my favorite parts of the UI is as the story progresses, the image of Zack on the menu changes with him. From becoming first-class soldier or getting the Buster Sword, the image on the menu evolves with you. So as your character grows, it's very noticeable every single time that you open up the menu. I had the pleasure of playing Crisis Core Reunion on PC on the Steam client, and let me tell you, it runs like a dream. You can tell that this game was designed with the PC version in mind. We have seen many Square Enix games in the past, whether they be remasters or ports on PC, run absolutely horrible and have a bunch of issues at launch. However, with Crisis Core Reunion, I have not had a single crash or bug in the almost 40 hours that I have played this game currently. This gives me a lot of hope for games like Forspoken when they release. I do hope that going forward, more of Square Enix's games on PC will run and play as good as Crisis Core Reunion does. I'm very excited to see what kinds of mods the community will also implement in this game after the launch as well. And you can bet that I will be doing videos on them, especially the ones that add difficulty or super bosses. The combat in the original Crisis Core in today's day and age is a bit outdated, so I'm very grateful that Square Enix went out of their way and drastically improved the combat in Crisis Core Reunion. It does get a bit repetitive after a while though. As always, like I do with every game, I played this game on hard mode at the start, and I'm going to be honest, it was pretty easy, and I wish it was a little bit harder. But maybe the mods that the community makes in the future will make up for that, or maybe even a update that they do later down the line with a New Game Plus that maybe adds a even harder difficulty. After grinding side quests and the like early on in the game, I found myself just kind of spamming the most OP spells and skills over and over again at most points in the game. You can get pretty powerful very early on by just doing side quests and getting the OP equipment from them and levels before continuing the main story. However, I will say that combat definitely does pick up after about the halfway point in the game. You unlock a variety of skills and new materia that make the game feel a bit more refreshing. Also, in Crisis Core Reunion, you can now fuse materia together to create new, more powerful materia that was never before seen in even the original Crisis Core. The DMW system is back and better than ever. The DMW system is this Final Fantasy's limit break system. It works like a slot reel, and when the slots line up the same character, you can use their limit breaks. There's also chances that it can turn into powerful summons like Bahamut and Odin. Even if you don't get a limit break, you're constantly getting buffs like no physical damage taken or no MP or AP cost from getting certain numbers paired up. This is also why I said the game's combat feels a bit spammy sometimes. But it's to be expected when playing a remaster of a game that is over 15 years old. I imagine that they wanted to keep the combat as close to the original as possible because of nostalgia. There's also a lot of similarities to Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat in Crisis Core Reunion. Things like shortcuts from Remake have made their way into this remaster, and it works very well. They also added materia sets, something that I wish Final Fantasy VII Remake had, as it would have made life so much easier when doing speedruns of the game, instead of constantly swapping your materia in and out all the time. I think it's safe to assume, though, that with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the Part 2 to Remake will have this materia set system as well. At the end of the day, I was very happy with everything that they did to overhaul the combat in Crisis Core Reunion. Crisis Core has always held a very special place in my heart, and I'm sure the same is for many others as well. And now with Crisis Core Reunion, I have yet another way to play one of my favorite games of all time from my childhood. Being able to go on this journey of growth and becoming a hero again with one of the best Final Fantasy characters and my personal favorite character of all time has been quite remarkable. This was quite possibly the best remaster that Square Enix has ever done, and I'm very much looking forward to future remastered titles from them even more than I ever was before. Thank you Square Enix so much for sponsoring this video and sending me the game early and giving me the opportunity to make a review on this game. Embrace your dreams, and above all, protect your honor as a soldier.